Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Shryock, and these are the RAIN sessions, an interview series where I'm talking to people who found their purpose through something, through a series of events, a flash of insight, whether positive or what felt very difficult at the time. And today we are talking with Karin Long. Hello, Karin.
Hi, Jennifer.
I'm so glad to have you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. I'm going to just dive right into the questions. The first being, what kind of work did you do before you felt called to something new?
Sales, and more sales.
And was that prior work fulfilling? Did you excel at it?
I did really well at it for a time. And, I would start something new and I'd do really well. And then I would get bored and feel unfulfilled and then kind of tank. And then I'd go on to the next thing and I would do really well. And then the same cycle would happen. It just wasn't gratifying. It was a job I did for money and to pay my bills.
I see. And what occurred to make you change course over time or in a flash to get you to where you are now?
It was over a length of time. I remember in 1997 or 1998, I got a gift. And I've always been an animal lover. I came out of the womb loving animals. So someone gave me the book, Chicken Soup for the Pet Lover's Soul. I had done some rescue work with dogs, particularly my favorite animal. So I read this book one weekend, cover to cover, and it's a series of short stories. I'm sure most people are familiar with the Chicken Soup series. So I read the book cover to cover, like literally sobbing. And it was about that time that I really realized that I wanted to do something that would make a positive impact, that would touch people's lives as well as help animals, especially dogs. That's just my animal of choice. So I think the crying was born out of frustration of not knowing or understanding what I could do to make a difference. I just knew there was something I needed to do.
Right. Sometimes I notice that I'll tear up when something's true for me, and it's a sign for me. My interpretation is this is my truth.
Yes, there's something that touches your heart.
Right, right. So can you talk a little bit more about some of the series of events that led up to what you're doing now? I'm so excited to get to what you're doing now, but let's kind of back up and walk us through. The first thing was you got this book and it really called to you. What else happened?
Well, right after that or about that time, I adopted a puppy. And it was my first puppy that I had since I was a little girl, and I was really excited, and I went and rescued this puppy. And I didn't know what kind of puppy I was getting, but it turned out to be a breed of dog that needed a lot of exercise training and stimulation. Well, I had one dog at that point. I was in my 30s, and I had one dog, a greyhound, which are easy and low maintenance. So I get this crazy puppy. So I was doing dog rescue too and helping dogs in that way. But when I got this puppy, Lola, I realized that I needed to do something else. So I signed up for classes. And that was really what changed my life. We enrolled in a sport called flyball. And I wanted to do agility, but Lola would really have none of that. She wanted to chase a ball all day. So that right there got me interested in dog training. I found it fascinating. We competed all over 3 or 4 states. I loved it. I loved it so much I started my own flyball team and I started training other dogs. I did rescue around that time too, where I would foster dogs and find them a home. I've probably done that 300 times. And it just snowballed, one thing after another. I got another breed of dog that it was a big working Mastiff breed. It needed a lot of training. It needed a lot of stimulation. He wanted to do other things. He was a therapy dog. We did some protection sports and that type of thing. And that snowballed into another thing. And I had read Marianne Williamson as well. And she has a quote that says, "Do what you love and the money will follow." Well, I realized doing the pet therapy work with my dog Maximus that I loved that because I was helping people and helping dogs. And I was helping dogs with rescue. And I was participating in sports. And it just snowballed. And I was learning about dog behavior and I was learning about training, which are really 2 different things. so one thing after another happened. I was in the right place in the right time. It was destiny. It was a number of things. But back in about 2010, I had a rescue dog. Someone came to interview him because he was looking for a detection dog. And I thought, oh, drug detection? And he goes, no, bed bugs. So that kind of freaked me out, and I was fascinated. So he ended up taking one of my personal dogs to train as a bed bug dog. And I just said, here, she needs a job. You can have her to work, but I get her back when you're done. Well, a few months later, he called me and offered me a job handling and training bed bug detection dogs. So that was another level. So I got to train bed bug detection dogs, drug detection dogs. And then I ran into a girl hiking with my dog on a mountain, and she had a breed I love, and I stopped to talk to her about her dog, and I saw that she trained service dogs. So I said to her, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do that for so long. How do you get involved with that? Who do I need to talk to? And she set me up with an interview. So I show up to this interview, and I'm interviewing and telling them all my experience. By that time, I had a fairly long resume, and my dogs had been written up in national magazines, and some of them held records. And I had done a lot of things, and the drug dogs and the bed bug dogs. I had a dog training facility at that point. So they hired me. And then he said, well, I'll pay you X amount of money. And I went, what? You're going to pay me to do this? I thought I was interviewing to volunteer. So at that point in 2012 is when that happened. And I've been doing that ever since. And it is the love of my life. I train service dogs for veterans with PTSD.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an amazing experience, and it's a gift. And I think in 1997 or 8, when I was reading that book and crying and knowing that I needed to do something, this is it.
So over the last 20 years, from that first moment when you read the Chicken Lovers for the Chicken Soup for the Pet Lover's Soul, there's just been this series of really personal, it was a personal journey, you and your dog, that grew into volunteering and serving so many animals and now people.
Yes.
And what were you called to do? How would you define your calling?
I define it as making a positive impact. And I had this little mantra, I want to make a positive impact on people's lives. And sometimes it is not easy. Driving down the highway in rush hour, sometimes it's not easy to make a positive impact on people's lives. But that was my little mantra. For the past 20 or so years, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I couldn't define it. I knew I wasn't doing it selling cars. There were some of the other things that I did, but I held out hope that there had to be something, and I had no idea that by taking my dog to fly ball classes, that would ignite the spark that led me down the path. Right. I started that in probably the year 2000, 1999, 2000, right around there. And one thing just led to another. And what I discovered by taking the fly ball classes, which was really the spark, is that I loved dog training. I loved the science behind it. I loved figuring out how they do things and why they do things. And it's truly a craft. You just can't say, hey, I'm a dog trainer. You have to have an understanding on behavior and, how they learn and how to enable them to learn what you want them to do. I mean, we have dogs that wake veterans up from nightmares, that remind them to take medication, that what is the word I'm looking for? Indicate to them when they're starting to feel stress so they don't go into a full episode of anxiety, stress, and then anger. Right. So there are so many things that the dogs can do. And it was that whole years of going through those processes and learning and studying and growing and finding opportunities that led me to this place.
Yeah. And I love that it started with something that you hadn't heard of or didn't know much about. You wanted to get into agility, and you kind of just followed your nose and your dog's nose at first on what was fun and what worked for your dog, for Lola.
Right.
And then it sounds like you were quite content to be a volunteer, that it really served you. And it wasn't until a paying job kind of landed in your lap that you realized that was even an opportunity.
Do what you love and the money will follow. And that mantra kept playing in my head too, because I had no idea, that you could have a career as a dog trainer. It didn't even occur to me, because what I was involved in were dog sports, and we all just got together and trained. It didn't even
Right.
occur to me until that guy called me up and offered me a job training bed bug dogs, which that's a whole other story. But it was an amazing experience. And yeah, it didn't even occur to me. I had no idea this existed. It just,
So
like,
can
right
you,
there.
I just want to take a moment and pause. I think you mentioned what you do now, but let me ask you just specifically so you can give us your title and very specifically tell us who you and the dogs that you train serve. What is it that you do now?
I am a service dog trainer for Canines with a Cause here in Salt Lake City. We train service dogs for veterans with PTI, post-traumatic stress, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, and sometimes mobility. We also have a program that works in a drug rehab facility. It's a therapy dog. And we also have a prison training program, which those are two things that connect with my life too. I have PTSD. I did a lot of drugs 40 years ago or so. I almost went to prison. So those things, to come up here to Salt Lake and be able to impact all those lives, as you can see, is a little emotional.
Absolutely. So not only were you doing something you love and just following these little calls with you and your dogs, but somehow it almost seems like chance, except it all lines up. It sounds like it's helping to heal you and bring some of your past problems full circle.
Yes, my first 21 years of life were quite traumatic, and just that was that. So those things that I experienced as a result of trauma in childhood, things in PTSD, I never realized I had PTSD. I always just thought something was wrong with me. So I couldn't hold a long-time job. I got bored with things. I didn't have long-term relationships. There were a lot of signs, but I had no idea. When you grow up in a situation, you think that's the norm. Everybody on both sides of my family, it was just layers of crazy. So you grow up and you deal with your reality the way it is. Well, in 2012, when I started working with veterans that had PTSD, a light went off in my head. And I went, wait a minute, I experienced that. I feel that way. And the light went off. And I've been through years of therapy. I've been to hypnotherapy. I've been to, psychological, I've been to everything, counseling, and no one ever made a diagnosis. So, and I probably didn't stick with anything long enough either. So I start training these service dogs, and then I realized that I'm experiencing everything they are. I just hadn't gone to war. I was in another war. So, after almost 40 years of I left the drugs behind, but there was always alcohol or food or something. So then the light went off, and I started doing this therapy that is recommended by the DOD, the Department of Defense, called EMDR. And it was miraculous, and that was like the final thing. But I think the whole point here is I got into that not knowing that that was my affliction, and I got healing through helping them get healing.
I love this story, Karin. It's so exciting to me. Some of the people that I've been talking to found their calling in an effort to heal themselves. They were just seeking some way to feel better. And it's almost like the opposite happened to you. You're following something exciting and fun and that touched you. And somehow it's healing and healed you as well.
One of the things too that I experience miracles every day in my job. I see miracles, I witness miracles between the healing power of these dogs and these veterans. And we rescue dogs out of the shelter. The organization I work for here in Salt Lake and the organization I work for in Phoenix, all rescue dogs from shelters. So we're saving that life. And more than once over the past 6 years, I've had veterans say to me, sorry, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, that in front of everybody at graduation, that they would not still be there if it had not been for the dog, the training, the experience of going through that. being able to get out again. Shut-ins now have a life. You know, people that were extremely suicidal now have a reason to live. And believe me, when you have PTSD, suicide is somewhere in the back of your head all the time. It was for me for many times. And I can unequivocally say that if it wasn't for my dogs, I wouldn't still be here. So I know how they feel. I can relate on that level. And I think that makes me so passionate about it. And doing this job has given me tremendous healing and purpose.
Absolutely. Lola helped to heal you from the start with Flyball, and then developing your skills with all these other, you're saving dogs, you're saved, you're helping to heal others. I'm so inspired by this story, Karin. It's beautiful.
You know what? I have the lottery job. You know, that question about if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do? I would still do the same exact thing. I really would.
That's one of the ways that we define calling. So some social scientists got together and made a distinction between JOB, job, career, and calling. And calling is something that we do regardless of pay. And a lot of people kind of then therefore feel that they shouldn't get paid for it. But that's another story. I don't believe that at all. I love it that, of course, we can acquire wealth and means through our calling. And your story is so inspirational about that.
You know what? I wake up every day feeling blessed that I get to do this for a living, that I get to do what I want to do, positively impact people's lives, and, you know, do what you love and the money will follow. And I get to do this every single day.
I love it. How do you define success, Karin, and where are you in relation to your definition?
You know, it's been a long and winding road. And, you know, in my 20s and 30s, I was always following that carrot, you know, that golden carrot, money, 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 money. And, you know, you had to look a certain way and dress a certain way. And now success really is being able to get up every morning and do what you love doing, and wake up in the morning and not think, oh, it's Monday. I don't care what day it is. I work 6 days a week happily. And a couple weeks ago, I had an experience. I was in a store, and the gentleman, when I was checking out, said, oh, so what are you off to go do? And it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, oh, I'm going to work. And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And I looked at him weirdly, because it didn't even like dawn on my head that anybody would feel sorry for me for going to work. And I just gave him a weird look, and I went, I love what I do. I'm happy to go to work. And even when I'm having a bad day, or maybe my PTSD has kicked in a little bit, I know that once I get there, just doing what I do will get me out of the sad mindset. Every single time that I've been not having a great day and I just buck it up and go to work, it turns it right around. I get invigorated. That's success to me. Like when I'm in the zone and I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm watching that dog, and I'm watching that veteran, and we're showing progress, and we're on the path, that is success to me, making that difference in changing lives on that level.
Beautiful.
There is nothing better than feeling like you contributed to creating a life where someone no longer wants to commit suicide.
My goodness. Yes. Yeah. Amazing. And when your work can turn your day around, touch all these other lives, what now wants to come through you and your work?
You know what? I am not sure. And I realize that there is more. And I, at this point, have learned just to be open to it, and it will show up. Put out the intention, and it will come. And, you know, I was talking to the executive director of Canines for the Cause last week, and she got a phone call because someone saw the news article, or the news, it was a news TV show, so whatever you call that. Kind of at a loss to words at this point. I'm a little emotional. Someone had seen the broadcast on the prison program, and they had from another state, and they called her wanting us to go up there and do that too. Well, that's where we get our service dogs from. We pull them out of the shelters, we send them to the prison program, they get trained, and then they go to a veteran. So the prisoners get help too. I almost was a prisoner. You know, had it been a different day and not 1980 when there were 300,000 people incarcerated in this country, had it been now, I would have been in prison. You know, so that to me is another avenue to help. So I don't know. I am going with the flow at this point. I get up in the morning, I meditate, I ask God to work for me, and I go with what comes to it with it. I know that it's just the same type of work I want to be in. And if it grows to something bigger, so be it. And if I do this for the rest of my life, I'm good too.
Right, right. You may well have already covered this, but final question. I'll give you one last chance to say something more. What legacy do you want to leave, Karin Long?
Beside, making a positive impact on people's lives is somehow to be a blessing to others and to be an anchor for peace and love and light.
Boy, I think you do that. I am so inspired by your story, and I'm so excited to share it with others.
Thank you.
I sort of knew that this sort of thing happened out there, but I really didn't know the specifics. And I'm so excited for other people to learn them who may not know as well. And your description of waking up and wanting to go to work, and even if you're having a hard day, work serving you, of this history that sounds troubled and painful and difficult, being somehow healed through the work that you do. I can imagine that so many people, not just me, are inspired by that, and that we can give them some hope that they can find their own purpose and calling, or to stick with it and trust the flow that might be.
Yes, trust the flow for sure.
I love it. Thank you so much, Karin. I'm so honored to meet you and talk with you today.
And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story, and I hope it helps somebody else. Just keep going. It took years, but I got there. I stuck with it.
Beautiful.